All right, I'm going to get started here. Quick question: if someone can't see the screen, maybe just let me know. Just put it in the chat if it's not being shared properly, just so I know before I get going. Because once I get going, I'm gonna roll through. All right, assuming things are good. Anyways, I'm gonna get going here just in the interest of time, because I do want to make sure that we have time for some questions toward the end here. So welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join today. For those who don't know me, my name is Gislason, and I'm the Executive Director of Regional Economies at an organization called the South Island Prosperity Partnership, or SIPP as we refer to it. So SIPP is the Regional Economic Development Alliance for the Greater Victoria region. I'm going to talk a little bit about SIPP in a few minutes. But I'd like to start, before we get started, just with a territorial acknowledgement. And I want to really acknowledge and respect that I do this work on the territories of the Lekwungen, the Kasepsum, the Saud, Sartlip, Sakem, Pakwachin, Malahat, Skianu, Suk, and Pacheedaht nations. And I commit to upholding the principles of UNDRIP and responding to the TRC calls to action. Before we get going here too, just a quick housekeeping item. So the presentation today is being recorded, and our hope is that we would record it and make it available publicly following today's session. And second, as I alluded, we do want to have an opportunity to answer questions. And so I would just ask that you put the questions into I think there's a Q&A tab on the Teams. So just shoot the questions in there. You can shoot them in along the way, or you can wait until the end and put them in then. But I will say, in the interest of time, we might not get to everybody's questions today, but I can do two things. One, I can stay on for anyone that wants to ensure their question is answered after our allotted time. Or what we can do is we can take all the questions today and compile a bit of an FAQ sort of document, and we can publish that and send that to everybody, just to ensure that we're all on the same page with some of these important topics. So on the screen, you should be able to see some of the outcomes we're hoping to achieve today, and that's really, I think, first getting some common definitions on the table, just so that we can ensure we're all on the same page, like around what is meant by the term local economy and what are we talking about when we talk about economic development and all these things. I'm going to talk about some of the key risks that are facing our region. And these risks were identified through a lengthy, robust process led by the Rising Economy Task Force that we struck earlier this year. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about this idea of economic development, sort of like what does it mean? How do you steward the economy forward through these economic development practices and strategies? I'm going to talk about our region's strengths, and really the essence of economic development is a strength-based. You want to build from your foundation of strengths to make that as effective as possible. I'm also going to talk about the SIPP model, as I mentioned, so like our organization, how it works and how we work to sort of steward these strengths and organize these strengths around economic development strategy. And then I'm going to talk about our new 5-year plan, which we're calling Rising Economy 2030. This plan was just released a couple of weeks ago, so we're really, really proud of it. I'll talk about the process we used to develop it and some of the key initiatives that we're hoping to actualize in the coming months and years. And then following that, we'll just open it up for questions. So I'm going to jump into just the first topic here, and that is the economy, or the local economy. What are we actually talking about? So for most of us, when we hear the word economy, we tend to think of either like the global economy, so things like trade and geopolitics or tariffs. We think about the national economy, so things like monetary policy, interest rates. We heard from the Bank of Canada just this week on this, right? GDP growth, employment trends, things like that. Or we think of the provincial economy, and I put a picture of our premier there. We've all seen the emphasis that our government seems to be putting on wanting to make BC the leader in Canada in certain areas, right? But for us, the essence of the word economy, we have to really think about like the root of what the word economy actually means. And the word economy derives from two Greek words. One is oikos, and the other one is nomos. And it literally, like the literal translation of economy is house management. You're thinking about microeconomics, right? House management or household management. And so then we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, where are these households located? And the answer to that, yeah, obviously they're in countries, obviously they're in provinces or states, but really specifically for us, they are in places, municipalities, cities, towns, villages. And so for us, it's really about the stewardship of the household is the ultimate aspiration, or the underlying aspiration of economic development. And so we have this aspiration like household sustaining jobs, right? And so we want to make sure that the household is being able to sustain itself. And to sustain itself, it needs income, right? So there's a dual income or a single income. The household has income, and ideally the income is greater than the expenses, essentially. And that's what allows us to build stability, enjoy a better quality of life over time. And so our job in sort of the municipal world or in strategy world, think about quality of life when it comes to economics and economic development. The idea of disposable income would be how we would sort of actualize that in our own lives. We want to save for vacations or maybe save for our children's education. Maybe have some money left over where we can support local businesses, right? Our local Main Street economy and buying, local products from local shopkeepers. And so the next question then is we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, where do these households derive these incomes from? And for us, there's two parts or sort of two answers to that question. There's a geographic answer, and then there's this labor market answer. So like the construct of the economy, what types of jobs are available in the economy? And so I'm going to answer the geographic question first. And so what I did here is I literally copied and pasted this map from Statistics Canada's website. And so this shows what Stats Canada calls the Victoria Census Metropolitan Area, or CMA. Now they have a two-part definition of what a CMA is. The first one is that it's a place in Canada that has a population greater than 100,000, with about 50,000 living in the urban core. So that's the first part of how they define what these CMAs are. The second part of the definition is what they call an integrated economy. So it's in terms of the human behavior and the trade patterns sort of within the geography. So where people live, where they work, where they spend money, where they go about their lives. And one of the terms we use in economic development around that is something we call a commuter shed. So it's sort of this natural area that sort of the economy takes place in. And according to Stats Canada, there's about 40 of these CMAs all across Canada. But one thing that's somewhat special about our region is that we have this shared economic container, but within it we have all these jurisdictions, right? We have 13 municipalities and 9 First Nations that share this integrated economic. We call it an integrated economic organizing unit, right? And so if you zoom in on the map, that's one thing you won't see is there's no other borders showing there. And that's why we do this work through our organization at SIPP, is that we do this work at a regional metropolitan level because of the way that the economy is organized. Now, the question is, okay, well, does this mean that Langford or Sydney or these other places don't have an economy? It's not as simple as that. Well, it's sort of, because these places all have businesses, right? They have commercial areas, they have commercial taxpayers, they have development going on, and they have places where people spend money. So you have a main street or places where you're buying local goods or something, and a portion of the municipal tax in all those places comes from that commercial entity. But really, if we fall back on the definition that I'm talking about here, the economies of these individual places would actually be incomplete, wouldn't it? Because we would be sort of ignoring where the household incomes actually is linked to. And therefore, when we talk about strategy, we really need to think about this in terms of where those households are being supported from. Now, next question, does this actually translate to real life? Or is this some policy wonk in Ottawa who doesn't know what they're talking about? And the answer is yes. So what this map shows is really just a small sample of major employers in the region. So there's a bunch of private businesses. There's a couple of crown corporations. Actually, BC Ferries was one of the organizations we worked with to map this out. And what it shows is just the postal codes for the employees of those 19 employers, and that's what the white dots are. And so if you look at the previous slide, right, so the map of it sort of cuts off at the top of the Malahat, right? And then if you look at this one, it's sort of the similar idea. Like there's a few people that commute from Shawnigan Lake and Mill Bay, but for the most part, it's fairly accurate, even with a small sample size of just 19 of I think there's about 15,000 business entities in the region, but just this small sample of 19, it really shows that the geography we're talking about is highly integrated. So that's the geographic answer to the question. The next thing I'm going to look at here is the labor market. So in other words, the construct of the economy. And I'm going to use an example here. So and this is the question of like, okay, so where are the opportunities available for households to actually derive these household sustaining jobs, right? And so the example to really help us understand this is a mill town in say northern or remote BC, right? And so the mill creates what we call the base incomes for that community. The base incomes is, in other words, is like the money coming into the community externally. And then what happens to that money once it comes in is it starts circulating in the local economy, right? Through the retail, services, hospitality, restaurants, even jobs like teachers, accountants, lawyers, all those sorts of things are all what we call non-basic income. So they're sort of benefacting from where the base incomes are actually coming from. Now, why do I show this slide? Obviously it's a simplified example, but for any region, including Greater Victoria, we really need to understand where our household incomes are coming from so that we can build strategies effectively that deal with opportunities, but also our vulnerabilities, right? Well, just last week, the Conference Board of Canada projected an 8% decline in our largest source of base incomes in the region, which is the public sector, right? The public sector is our largest by a wide margin in terms of our dependency, and that creates a real vulnerability for us as a region in the impact that will have and sort of this cascading effect. So if you look at it from the flip side, if any of these sort of non-basic actors, like if a retail business closes or a service or a restaurant closes, it doesn't have that same multiplier effect that would happen if, like what happens if the mill closes down or slows down. It would have a detrimental impact, a cascading effect on the rest of the community, right? Now, here's something for us in the chat. If you want to take a guess, what do you think our number 2 highest dependency is in the region? So number 1 is public sector. What's number 2? Have a guess in the chat, and we'll look at it toward the end. And so this is the reason why we struck the Rising Economy Task Force back in March, and it was obviously first and foremost started as as a response to what you might call the elevated rhetoric coming from our neighbors to the south, and real things like tariffs, right? So the Trump administration was causing a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in the economy and in the community, and we're still feeling it. But really, we needed to understand sort of what are the implications and the risks to us with all this going on, and that's sort of where the Rising Economy Task Force that was their goal. But once they got started, but this is back in March, they discovered very quickly that it's not necessarily about how the tariffs will impact us directly. It's actually more about how vulnerable we are to these outside forces and outside decision makers in general. And then the question for all of us is, okay, so how do we regain control of our economic sovereignty, right? And that's really the question, I think, for the remainder of the 21st century is like, how do we regain control, economic sovereignty, controlling our own destiny rather than being subject to these big outside forces, including things like tariffs and geopolitics. And so as the task force got into that work through a whole bunch of different engagement surveys and things, they assembled these 7 risks to our region. And I think most of them we're fairly aware of them, right? But you can look at this report on our website, and it goes into depth on all 7 of these. So things like affordability pressures, how that impacts our ability to, say, attract healthcare workers, for example, our over-reliance in the public sector, which I already spoke to. But the other question is we have this stagnating productivity in the private sector that's not able to sort of offset the downturn in the public sector, and we really need to unlock that productivity in the private sector. Our essential worker gaps, I mentioned healthcare, but there's also a lot of anxiety out there around things like artificial intelligence and how is that going to impact the types of jobs that are available in our region over the medium and long term. We know our commercial districts have been under pressure, our downtown, for example, but also we've heard many examples around the region of um, the businesses that have faced these massive lease increases as the result of these sort of post-pandemic lease agreements that were signed. And now we're seeing 65, 70, sometimes even 100% increases in leases for local businesses. And that's caused a lot of them to either completely close down or even move to a different area. And so what we need is we need a regional approach to this. Like we can't really look at, I don't think having 13 isolated strategies or approaches to solve these problems is the best way. We really need an aligned regional approach that looks at our regional shared economy. Another thing that they discovered was we really need to look at our entrepreneurial culture here. So how, are we complacent to some of these issues because of our reliance on public sector, or do we have this entrepreneurial spirit that we can unlock through deliberate attention and action over time? Now, the good news. The good news is that despite all these risks and it's for us as decision makers in whatever capacity you're in, it's good to know what the risks are, right? So we can make decisions accordingly. But the good news is that we do, our region is really quite blessed, really. We have a number of strengths and assets that we can build from to sort of counteract these risks and threats. You can find a full summary of these on our Rising Economy 2030 plan website, which is ourrisingeconomy.com. But the point I'm making here is that the strategy that we need to build as a region really needs to be built on what are we known for, what are we good at, and that's the essence of economic development strategy. Now, if any of you out there are fans of Jane Jacobs, as I am, Jane is basically, you could call her the matriarch of the community planning profession. But what I think people may not be aware of, if you know Jane's work, is that she's actually written much more extensively about the economy of these places, and how these economies work and change and evolve over time. But one awesome concept that she points out in this book, The Economy of Cities, is that economic development isn't necessarily about economic growth or economic expansion. It's actually more about improvement. So this idea of improving the quality of life over time for residents is really is what we're talking about here. So it's change for the better that we're trying to examine. We want households that are resilient and strong and thriving into the future, so we can get people thinking positively about the future. The other thing that I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but it's really this idea of when you talk about economic development strategies, you want to really outline the roles and responsibilities. And this is just the government side that I'm showing here, and this is what we call the theory of interrelated factors or interrelated practice. And so we know that the federal government has a strong role in things like industrial policy and geopolitics, trade agreements, all that kind of stuff. We know the provincial has a lead role on some of the big policy and program drivers that drive our economy. Things like the business climate, the tax environment, workforce development is their role. Also, some of the big sort of macro sectors in our provincial economy, like forestry and mining and things like that. But for us, it's really looking at how do we actualize this? How do we take control of our local destiny? And that's really looking at the municipal government and the role of this, what we call interjurisdictional collaboration and cross-sectoral collaboration across the region. And that's where I've outlined a few examples of the roles and responsibilities. For example, it wouldn't make sense to me that you would have 13 different agriculture strategies in this region. It would be better to have one regional agriculture strategy, and then you can work with these 13 municipalities and say, here's the roles and responsibilities within that sort of more cohesive, aligned strategy. So that's the only point I'm making with this slide here. I'm going to talk a little bit about our model. So the South Island Prosperity Partnership it's a fairly unique model in Canada. It started off was founded in 2016, created by by municipal governments in 2016. And it was really a response to the 2008-2009 financial crisis where this came from, and our stagnant, what you might call a stagnant recovery in our region. In fact, we were the second slowest metropolitan area in all of Canada to show signs of recovery out of that crisis and the recession that followed it. And so local leaders got together and said, "Hey, we need to think through this. We didn't really have an economic development agenda or a well organized one before that." And so they got together and they created this organization now known as SIPP, and they did it first with these sort of guiding principles. And so there's a few of them on the slide there. One of them is that it's equitable. So we created this sort of apples to apples formula that allows the smaller jurisdictions to have equal say alongside larger jurisdictions, so not weighted like the CRD is. The other one is that needed to be affordable. So getting an on-ramp for these municipal entities that hadn't been well invested in economic development before. And so our model, we're funded at about $1.64 per capita as an average across the region. And this puts us as the most cost efficient of any of these mandates in Canada. And we've looked at all of our peers in other places, and the average seems to be about $9 per capita. So we are obviously quite a bit lower than that. The other unique thing, or I think the most unique thing about our model, is that it's cross-sectoral. So we have obviously government as the foundation, like you would see in any city or community across the world. But really, it's the invitation to bring private sector, third sector, nonprofits, post-secondary institutions, all these partners together to collaborate towards solutions and opportunities. And then the other one that we're obviously very proud of is that First Nations have been embedded in our model since the very beginning in our founding constitution. In fact, we did our constitution signing ceremony at the Songhees Wellness Center hosted by Chief Ron Sam. So our founding partners felt that this was really imperative to holistic regional prosperity. And you can just see there, like this, how the model works is that we have, there's the municipal formula, which started off as $1 per capita plus 0.07% of taxes, but that's actually gone down over time just because we haven't increased it as population and tax bases have grown. We've sort of maintained a fairly steady operating model. It's really, really efficient. So we're proud of that as well. And then the other ones are shown on the screen there. Some of our outcomes to date. So we did some third-party analysis that showed our model is quite effective. So we have one thing we're really good at is leveraging. So in the last few years, we've secured about $8.5 million into our projects and programs, primarily coming out of the last Rising Economy Task Force, which was organized as a pandemic recovery project. But if you look at our entire 9-year history and sort of divide all that up, you'll find that for every dollar of municipal investment, we've been able to leverage an additional $1.63 into these projects and programs. And then those projects and programs then have ROI on the region, right? And that works out to about 57 to 1 over our municipal investment and about 38 to 1 over our total operations. This year, we were really proud too of, obviously we've received many accolades over the years, but this year we got the bronze medal for the Economic Development Organization of the Year through the International Economic Development Council, which we're obviously very honored and proud of that. A few examples of the types of programs that I was talking about. So we have things like Blue Action Canada, which was the first ocean technology accelerator in the country. The Indigenous Prosperity Center, that's a photo of their youth conference. So we work with over 200 youth per year through the Indigenous Prosperity Center, which is a subsidiary program of SIPP. The Blue Pathways Initiative, which is a workforce development initiative designed to move people in and through the blue economy, so ocean, marine, and all these things. Really exciting stuff for the region. You can see a couple of examples of the research stuff that we've done that's led to all this work. And then the bottom corner there is actually just a post about our new innovation, sort of our co-working and innovation studio, which is down on Harold Street, as a way to bring the ocean space community together, right? Science community, entrepreneurs, startups, etc. Another one that we're quite proud of is a platform, and you probably haven't seen this because this program is really designed to be an outward facing. It's designed to tell the story about Greater Victoria to outside audiences. And that's why we call it Victoria Rising, right? Because most people who don't live here don't know that we have 13 municipalities. They just think of it as Victoria, right? So you can see in the blue section there, we have these stories of entrepreneurs and change makers who are really impacting our region. And we want to tell those stories as part of the story of like, what's it like to be an entrepreneur here? What's it like to be a doctor? You can see a couple of doctors and we're trying to attract doctors and healthcare workers through there. We also use the platform to attract, corporate investment and business relocation. And there's just an example there of a company we worked with out of Brazil that came to Victoria as a result of the work, and really awesome company, like really values aligned, sort of family oriented culture and stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Rising Economy 2030 plan before we get to some questions here. I really want to start by just acknowledging like this, it's really about meeting the moment. We know that our region is at risk of entering, what I would call a period of stagnation, right? Like we are entering a really challenging time. But we also know that our region is brimming with possibility. So we have the talent, we have the creativity, we have the quality of life that most regions can only dream of. But with this over reliance on public sector stability and, young people are actually showing signs that they're leaving at a really high rate that we haven't seen in about 20 years. It's really the moment in time is really to reset the story of who we are and who we can become and make sure that people are invited and included in that opportunity. And that's what Rising Economy 2030 is all about. We're really inviting our region to be part of this. That's why we're doing things like this webinar today. We're inviting local governments to be part of this. We want to engage people. We want people to support the work and be part of it and helping us shape these initiatives. So you can find the full plan on this website, ourrisingeconomy.com. Before I touch on it, I just wanted to quickly highlight the process. So we've been working on this various touch points throughout the last about 10 or 11 months. So lots of surveys. We had an open house back in May where we had over 100 people came in and gave us real feedback on some of the initiatives that we're going to talk about. So overall, we've outreached and touched, I would say, thousands of residents across the region over the course of the last 10 to 11 months. And this slide is just showing that. So one of the things in our public survey is we asked people to give us their postal code of where they live, and just wanted to make sure that we're obviously gathering perspectives from across the metro area. This process for us really started last fall. So we have an annual event called Local Leadership Forum, where it's actually an invite-only event because it's really designed to be, it's really something we co-design with our municipal partners and other sort of community leaders to really think through the idea of like cross-sectoral collaboration. Like how would we bring together a multifaceted solution to a problem? So what this slide is showing is it's the result of it's called a future backwards exercise that we did with the Roy Group, where the leaders, we had leaders from the West Shore, we had leaders from the Saanich Peninsula and the Central area, and they broke into groups and sort of designed these scenarios for the future. And they came up with a dream scenario, so the ideal future for the region, and also a nightmare scenario. So what do we don't want, stuff we don't want to happen in the region. And the gap between the dream and the nightmare is really the motivation for us is obviously we want to figure out like, how do we steer the region toward what we want and away from what we don't want? And that's what these other colors are showing. It's sort of like this reverse engineer idea where like, what are the decisions we need to make today, tomorrow, and next month that sort of steer us toward where we want to go? And how SIPP steers where we want to go is through our mission. And our mission is that we are a collaborative regional alliance driving the economic future of Greater Victoria, locally grounded, values aligned, future facing, and action ready. We implement priority projects and initiatives that steer the region toward our 4 strategic RISE goals: a resilient economy, an inclusive economy, a sustainable economy, and an entrepreneurial economy. Now, what are we steering toward? Well, we're steering toward this renewed vision for the future. And we really want to invite you to imagine a Greater Victoria that is not only admired for its beauty and livability, but also recognized as a leader in inclusive and future-ready economic development. And our vision is to build a region where innovators and entrepreneurs thrive alongside local shopkeepers, where Indigenous and non-Indigenous people co-create prosperity, where young people and families have access to good jobs that enable them to afford to build their futures here, and where economic uncertainty is met with conviction, capability, collaboration, and care. And so we organized this plan, a bit of a roadmap toward these four areas, and that's how it's organized. The first one is around resilience, and we think a big predictor of resilience is all about how we respond, right? How can we respond to these big external forces? And for us, what that means is we need leaders with the capacity to really understand the issues and then take action. And so that's what these three tools are designed to do. One is the local leadership forum, which I described already. Another one is our annual Rising Economy Conference, which we've been doing the last few years. And that's really about engaging the business community, bringing them together, educating them, but also just engaging them in the work and steering to our region toward a better future. And then the third one is just ensuring we have a strong research and data capacity to inform the decisions that need to be made. Another key ingredient to resilience is diversification. We need to ensure our future is not tied or maybe is less tied to the BC public sector, and therefore building on our strengths in sectors like the ocean and marine technology and innovation space, which we've been doing the last few years, but really let's continue to grow that. We need to activate emerging sectors like life sciences and health, and some of our sectors that need to be restabilized and have opportunity to grow too. But the agriculture sector represents, I think, a big area of strength that we need to deliberately organize around. And the third ingredient for resilience is competitiveness. And so we know that businesses in the region are being impacted by tariffs and trade barriers. And so we need to ensure that they can pursue markets outside of the US, and therefore they need to be more competitive. And that's what this program that we're co-designing with the Vancouver Island Manufacturing Excellence Alliance is going to do. We actually just applied for a federal grant that's going to be a sort of a 30-month intensive program around this starting in 2026, obviously, if we're successful. And one of the companies shown there is Rainhouse, based in Victoria here, but just as an example of the type of company that's leading this with us. Inclusive economy. So I mentioned that our key area in inclusiveness is around the Indigenous economy. We really want to help actualize this. We think a great way to do that is through a focus on Indigenous youth and also Indigenous entrepreneurs. And young people really represent the future, right? If you think about the potential for young people today, but also into the future to become the future leaders, future not just workforce, but also entrepreneurs and community leaders. Another key aspect of inclusiveness is equity. So how do we build more equity in the economy? And one of the main tools for that is ownership, right? So it's a great indicator of equity is how people can own more of the economy. And so what we're looking to do is pilot a community ownership model that would be designed to buy commercial real estate. Now, if this is effective, it would help us stabilize some of these things I mentioned earlier, stabilizing the rents and giving more certainty to our business community. Because I think one of the issues in our region is that a lot of our commercial real estate is owned by non-local actors, right? Equity funds on Bay Street or something, and they don't necessarily care about the vibrancy of our main streets, do they? And so the more local ownership we can maintain in perpetuity, the stronger our communities are going to be. The third pillar is around sustainability. We have a few initiatives in our plan around this, but one that I'll just highlight here is that we want to position Greater Victoria as a leader in renewable energy, and especially in ocean renewables. And our goal is to target 2 megawatts of new energy by 2030 in this area. And along that path, we also want to attract the companies and the innovators that are going to be helping us get there. And that work's actually already started over just this last summer. And you can see the map there shows one of the tech demonstration programs, which is on Vancouver Island, which is showing this integrated idea of integrating different energy sources into a microgrid, a land-based microgrid. The fourth area of our plan is around the entrepreneurial economy. So I already talked about the importance that we need to unlock around entrepreneurs in the private sector to sort of offset our dependence on public sector. And so we're going to support innovation and entrepreneurs in ocean industries, in life sciences and health tech, the maker economy, which I just spoke about, manufacturers. We also want to bring that down to Main Street. And by supporting Main Street businesses through a shared toolbox, right? And we can do that collaboratively with our municipal partners who interface with a lot of these Main Street businesses on a day-to-day basis. But things like adopting digital tools, adopting AI, process modernization, and really the key here is that we want to collaborate regionally. We can bring in municipals, but also chambers of commerce, also the banking community and other actors that can help us ensure our small businesses are taken care of. Now, I just want to close by talking about one thing. I sort of alluded this before about this entrepreneurial culture, the need for an entrepreneurial culture, a culture that's less complacent, more the willingness to take risks, but also this culture in our community to support people, entrepreneurs, risk takers, involving young people, involving the next generation in the future of our region. And that's why we're really excited to launch what's called the Greater Victoria Possibility Charter. And this is just a starting point designed to what we're saying, it's flip the script, change the script about our weaknesses and get us talking about a new narrative for the future, one where possibilities are plentiful, where our youth and young people are nurtured and encouraged to grow here or start businesses here and be part of the change and momentum in our region going forward. I'm going to show a quick video just to highlight this.
I choose to live in Greater Victoria because it's vibrant.
The community really cares.
It's a great place to raise kids.
It's a place where I can build my business. There's such talent here.
There's a ton of passion here and so many innovators.
Opportunity for possibilities.
The transformation that I would like to see in Greater Victoria is for our region to be more of what it actually already is today. So more bold, more welcoming, more inclusive.
I want us to move from being admired for our natural scenery to being recognized for the solutions that we can create here.
I would like to see a little less reliance on the public sector and the private sector grow in different areas.
I would love to see the city transform in ways that could create more opportunities for young people.
The Possibility Charter is really a rally call for the region across all of society, business, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, elected leaders, government officials, really to come together and send a message that this region is a place that has lots of potential and lots of future possibility.
There is a line in the Possibility Charter that really resonated with me, that everyone has the right and the chance to dream.
And in that charter where it talks about legacy, we want to leave a legacy to allow our kids to continue to flourish.
Number one was a line about holding space for the conversations that need to happen here, for storytelling, for mentorship.
Hope is fundamental to strategy.
And to me, along with hope comes action.
I'm signing the Greater Victoria Possibility Charter because I'm a student that needs a more vibrant environment for young people to come into for the future.
I'm signing the Greater Victoria Possibility Charter because I'm an optimist.
I think it's important that we have unity and we have a vision.
So we want to invite you to join us. Sign the Greater Victoria Possibility Charter and help us co-create a brighter future together.
Awesome. Exciting stuff. So the Possibility Charter, you can see that just a highlight there on the screen of what it is, but you can find you can actually sign the digital copy of the charter at choosepossibility.ca. We really encourage you to sign it and share it and have conversations with the young people or any people in your life about our region and try to flip the script from this sort of like the cynical negative thing that we see, the letters to the editor, and get us thinking about our future in more positive terms. I'm going to close that. So just to recap, the economy begins at home, right? House management in our communities, on our main streets, and in our region. Municipal governments and all of us really are vital stewards of that local prosperity. And the municipal governments created SIPP to unite our efforts, leverage resources, and translate that collaboration into tangible projects and outcomes. And our Rising Economy 2030 plan is really a pragmatic roadmap, one that steers us toward an economy that is resilient, inclusive, sustainable, and entrepreneurial over time. So thank you so much for coming today. Hopefully this talk sort of helped us connect some of the dots around how our region works and what its potential is. And I'm going to shift it to questions.